Good morning, welcome to CATEX-TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Monday, April 4th, 2011. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time in the U.S., 4:30 p.m. in London, 12:30 in Bermuda, and Mexico City it's 10:30 a.m. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX. Overseas, our AOL instant mail address is CATEX-TV. 43 years ago today, in 1968, standing on a balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. He had won the Nobel Peace Prize 2 years earlier. Also last night at about 1 a.m., actually earlier this morning, President Obama filed documentation with the Federal Election Committee indicating that he's planning on seeking a second term in November of 2012. We'll go to our main news today. Well, the main news is amazing, actually. Air France says that they actually have found the wreckage of Flight 447 out in the South Atlantic, including bodies of victims of the crash have been found in the wreckage of the plane. This is almost 2 years after the crash that killed 228 people. The French Minister of Ecology said on France radio, "We have bodies, there are bodies that are still in the parts that we found." Air accident investigators did not confirm that the bodies were found, but the head of the agency investigating the crash said this morning in Paris he believed that the main part of the wreckage had been discovered. He said, "It seems that we've discovered the wreckage site. Up until now, we had only found a few elements of debris floating on the surface." Air France 447 disappeared after taking off from Rio de Janeiro on its way to Paris. The French said that a team led by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution discovered parts of the plane during an underwater search operation conducted on Saturday. Investigators have not yet established what caused the crash, and large parts of the plane, including the black boxes, the flight recorders, have not been located. It's not known whether or not the flight recorders are included in this debris field that they've just discovered. The area where the plane went down is far out in the Atlantic, 2 to 4 days for ships to reach it from the nearest ports in South America or Western Africa. The French say that the ocean floor is rough with underwater mountains and valleys. So this is going to be quite something if they can pull those flight recorders up. Well, in the United States, we have had a big topic of discussion on Southwest Airlines 737-300 series planes. Most of you know by now that on Friday night, a flight from Phoenix to Sacramento was diverted to an Air Force, actually a Marine Corps base in Yuma, Arizona, after a 5-foot hole developed in the fuselage. It was a fuselage tear of a Boeing 737-300. None of the people on board the plane were injured. Since then, Southwest grounded its 79 other 737-300s and began inspecting them. All in all, the airlines had to cancel about 600 flights over the past 3 days. Southwest said last night that 2 other 737-300s have been found to have cracks similar to those on the plane that had the 5-foot hole. The Associated Press is reporting that a 3rd plane has been found with cracks. The other 19 planes inspected so far have already been returned to service. The cracks found in the 3 planes developed in 2 lines of riveted joints that run the length of the aircraft. The National Transportation Safety Board said that Boeing is working on a service bulletin for all 737-300 models with comparable flight time cycles as the jet over Arizona. That plane was 15 years old and had had about 39,000 takeoff and landing cycles. That means the plane took off 39,000 times, moved up from normal pressurization up to 6 miles high where the pressurization is lighter, and then descended 39,000 times from light pressure into heavy pressure. There are 931 737-300 still in service in the world. 228 of them are in the United States. Southwest has 79 of them. Well, an update in Japan. The Japanese government has now asked Tokyo Electric and Power, who are the owners of the stricken Fukushima nuclear plant, to consider wrapping a giant sheet around the facility to contain further radioactive leaks. The government's request calls for building frame structures around the 45-meter-high reactor buildings and then wrapping them with some sort of sheeting. If all of the 4 damaged reactors were wrapped up in this manner, it would take about 2 months and cost about $1 billion. It's not clear what kind of material would be used for the sheeting. Atomic energy experts are skeptical. They stress that the risk of such sheeting would be torn apart by heat coming from the nuclear reactors is quite high. Also, it would hamper restoration work, including the spraying of water onto the reactors. TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power, has, though in the past, turned to a host of sometimes bizarre methods to tame the nuclear plant. Efforts over the weekend to clog a leak in the number 2 reactor with a special polymer sawdust and shredded newspapers failed to halt the flow at a cracked concrete maintenance pit along the shoreline. They've also used white powder poured into a tunnel from reactor number 2, hoping that it would serve as a colored sort of dye to trace the source of the leak. That didn't work. The plant's operators know that they have to keep pouring water onto the reactor to prevent further damage, although they know that there's a side effect, and that's leakage. And just this morning, TEPCO said that it plans to release 10,000 tons of water with very high radiation levels out into the Pacific Ocean. That move will clear the space in a waste storage building to put even more highly contaminated water. The government said that although this is an unavoidable emergency measure, there will be no harm on fish caught in that area. Japan's nuclear crisis is likely to lead to one of the country's largest and most complex ever set of claims for civil damages. It's going to hand a huge bill to the government as well as to the Tokyo Electric Power Company. Lawyers say the size of the claims could be the biggest in Japanese legal history. No precedent for how this could be handled. George Gibson, a partner at a law firm Norton Rose in Tokyo, said potentially this could be one of the largest civil claims in Japan because of the number of people affected. Japan's government expects the earthquake and tsunami to cost up to $300 million in material damage. $300 billion in material damage, But the ultimate cost will be far bigger as economic activity shrinks due to power shortages and compensation claims amounts. Most of the claims will be made under the country's 1961 Act on Compensation for Nuclear Damage. Unfortunately, unlike the U.S. and Europe, this places no cap on the total liability level. That cost is likely to be split between TEPCO and the Japanese government. The law does allow for TEPCO to be exempt if the incident was caused by a grave natural disaster, which presumably would be this. The lawyers say that political pressure in Japan will force TEPCO to possibly pay for about 40 to 60% of that damage. TEPCO is going to be in very big trouble. Well, here's confirmation of the news that began to come out late Friday. Investors in Munich Re's Muteki catastrophe bond apparently face a complete loss of their investment as a result of the March 11th Japan quake. This is according to Moody's. Moody's has downgraded the Class A notes, originally issued in May of 2008, to C. That's like super junk bond. The bond program protects Munich Re against exposures by assuming earthquake reinsurance provided to Japanese agricultural mutual insurer Zenkyoren. Based on calculations, Moody's says that the losses from the March 11th quake will breach the bond's trigger point and reach the exhaustion level, which, quote, will likely result in the complete loss of principal to Class A note holders. Well, that's certainly an uncorrelated risk. The stock market in New York is up 19 points right now. We'll go to a word from our sponsors.
designed for peace.
Well, this is a pronouncement from the Oracle at Delphi. Despite a number of significant regional events, the April 1 renewal season saw U.S. property cat rates fall by 5 to 10%, according to a report just published by Aon Benfield. Aon Benfield said that many insurers scheduled to renew on 4/1 had opted to extend their programs while losses from the Japanese quake and tsunami were assessed. Broker said that, quote, where Japanese renewals took place, the costs of typhoon programs increased by 5 to 10%, and most quake programs increased within a range of 25 to 50%. They noted that this was not yet a market hardening event. Also, they opined a little bit on U.S. hurricane reinsurance rates. They said that U.S. hurricane reinsurance prices may decline as much as 5% in June and July, because firms already hold enough capital to compete for business even as they pay claims on the New Zealand and Japanese quakes. According to Brian Earhart, chairman of Aon Benfield's analytics business, he said the reinsurance market remains functional with its existing capital base. Rates for U.S. property cat reinsurance that includes hurricane fell 5 to 10% in the quarter ending 4/1. Global prices for reinsurance coverage have fallen on high levels of capital available in the industry. So everybody's saying that they're going to need another large hit. In fact, it's followed on here by a gentleman from AM Best, Matthew Mosher. Mr. Mosher participated in a webinar hosted by our friends Tiger Risk up in Stamford on Friday, and he said that an early assessment so far of rated insurers after the Japanese quake have indicated nothing insofar as a solvency issue. Mosher said, obviously, it's still early, and there are smaller companies that we don't rate. Of what we've looked at and have rating coverages on, we're comfortable that there won't be a solvency issue. Mosher said that reported loss estimates thus far have had reasonable impact with respect to capital level. Mosher does not anticipate the earthquake and tsunami alone to harden the current market cycle. Listen to this. That, he said, would take another major event, possibly something along the size of a Hurricane Katrina, to really move the market on a global basis. He said at that stage, insurers might reassess capital allocations to look for the best return. Yes, indeed, Mr. Mosher. He said that would start to move rates in other areas besides just property. Yes. The UK-based specialist insurer Tawa has created its first specialist runoff reinsurer. It's going to provide the Pennsylvania National Mutual Casualty Insurance Company with protection against lead paint risks that the company wrote between 1991 and 1997 on properties in and around Baltimore, Maryland. Bermudian-regulated QX Re will have a maximum reinsurance liability of $100 million that's been collateralized by a trust fund, within QX Re, which in turn was funded by reinsurance premium and an equity injection from Tawa. Tawa's Operation Pro-US will manage claims adjustments, plus other administrative tasks relating to the portfolio. The head of U.S. operations for Tawa, Marvin Moan, noted that QX Re was an innovative way for us to assume this discontinued portfolio. Penn National Insurance CEO Kenneth Schutz said that the deal provides us with reinsurance coverage so that we have effectively put lead paint liability exposures behind us. I'm sure they are thrilled with finally looking at that in the rearview mirror. Well, there's some discussion in the United States as to who had a bad weekend. That lunatic Charlie Sheen had one of his Torpedo the Truth shows in Detroit on Saturday night. Approximately 60% of the people walked out before the show was finished. They were screaming at him, and he was screaming back at them. I understand he did a little better last night in Chicago. However, it would be very hard for anybody to exceed the kind of negative weekend that Mr. Wyman Sims had in Miami. Mr. Sims died when his car struck a palm tree a few minutes after he had stolen a cold 12-pack of Budweiser beer from a BP gas station in Florida. Broward County Sheriff's official says that the employee at the BP gas station where Mr. Sims stole his 12-pack of Budweiser flagged down a passing police car to report the theft at 1:20 p.m. yesterday afternoon. The deputy went after the car. He found Mr. Sims' Chrysler Sebring wrapped around a palm tree a short distance away with the 12-pack of Budweiser inside. Mr. Sims was pronounced dead at the scene. Police say that Mr. Sims' car had a temporary tire on the right rear of the car, one of those donuts, which could have caused Mr. Sims to lose control of the car. Well, yeah, it's something. You sit around at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, you decide it's a good idea to go out and buy a 12-pack of beer and then not pay for it, then run away in your car. It's unfortunate. That's all the news that we have for today. If we have any breaking news, we'll come back and tell you. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.